Okay, Bob.
Yes.
There are
Hi.
some friends of mine helping me,
Very good.
so I think that we are doing history because
History.
yeah, because never do an interview by Skype before.
Okay.
So let us to try it. Okay.
Um,
The first thing I want to say you is thanks a lot for your time.
mhm.
This is not very common to us to people give us the chance to speak with them in another country. So we are really happy.
Me alegra.
Me too.
Okay.
So we will begin with the interview about your beginnings in the mastering audio. I want to know how do you begin with the mastering? Did you get to mastering before to being a mixing engineer or directly to be a mastering engineer?
Okay. Let's go back to 1971. In 1971, I began recording direct to two track. Do you understand what that means? Direct to
Yes,
two track?
only
Okay.
one track.
Only one stereo track.
Okay.
Okay. So that then when I went back to my studio, this was done on remotes, okay?
Yes.
On location. When I went back to my studio, at that time, maybe I had to use a little bit of EQ or a little bit of processing because the recording was maybe not perfect on location, okay? So that's the beginning of when I first started mastering. At that time, I learned how to make a recording sound better right then at
Yes,
that.
by processing the audios in your
Right,
studio.
right, right. But mastering is not about processing. It's about if a recording is already very good, then there should be no mastering done at all on it. Okay. So if I made a
Uh-huh.
great recording on location, I didn't do any processing at all when I came back.
So did you find any mastering that it is not real needed?
Oh, today that gets very complicated. But first, let me finish the first thought.
Okay.
Okay, so now we fast forward that was on analog tape, okay?
Yes.
Now we fast forward to the digital era. At all times, I became an expert at learning how to make natural recordings and to, in the mastering side, to preserve or enhance that, okay?
Yes.
All right. So now your question is today, is there a lot of mastering going on that is not needed? Well, that even happens to me now if I'm working with a pop or even a rock recording, and we have to raise the loudness of that recording to be competitive. When we do that, we use processing. And then that processing requires more processing to compensate for the first processing.
Huh.
In other words, if I apply a compressor, I will probably have to follow that compressor with an equalizer to compensate a little bit for the softer sound that the compressor produces. But if I didn't use the compressor in the first place, I wouldn't have needed the EQ. So then I wouldn't have needed to master.
Yes. So you are needing more and more processing as you use processing.
Right. And as I raise the level, I need
Okay.
more and more processing, and I need more processing to compensate for the processing that raise the level.
And what is the limit?
1 second. That's what we call a vicious circle, un círculo vicioso.
Yes. Yes, in Spanish we say that this is a fish that eats
Its own tail.
When did you think
Where's the end?
that the mastering is good enough to not use more processing?
When do I think that a recording is good enough to not need mastering?
No, when you are mastering,
Yeah.
when did you think that you have finished the processing
When it sucks.
when it sucks?
The louder the recording, the master that I have to make, the quicker. What we say is diminishing returns. Do you understand diminishing returns?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So in other words, very quickly we reach what you say a limit where I can keep trying and trying to make it sound better, but it doesn't, it gets worse.
Yes. Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, that's fine. What is for you a good mastering?
One that makes the client happy.
When the client pays you.
No, when the client is happy. No,
Yes,
seriously,
yes, I know.
that question doesn't mean anything, Robert, because it depends on the music, the recording, the processing.
Can you say us your mastering chain, your equipments?
Well, we should have done this interview downstairs in Studio A, and we would have put a camera up and pointed at the different pieces of gear.
Yes, for example, if you want.
Well, that's too hard to do today. When I set up an interview with when I do seminars by remote using Skype,
Yes.
we'll take a camera down to Studio A and set up lighting and answer all your questions and look at the gear and so on. But this is just a little interview, so I can't afford to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so I can tell you a little bit about
Yes.
the processors that I have in my chain.
Yes, that's
but
good.
I can't show you.
That's good.
So I have an equalizer
Yes.
from Maselec. Have you heard of Maselec?
Yes. From Prism Sound, I think.
Yes, yes. Called the MEA2.
Yes.
That's very, very sweet equalizer, muy dulce. And very, it makes things sound better. It's because its curves are very wide and gentle.
Yes, this is very musical.
Yes, that's a good word. It's very musical.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Then I have two more equalizers in the chain. I have one from a company in Poland called Better Maker. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
I think I have seen some of their equipments.
Okay. Well, the Better Maker is a digitally controlled analog equalizer, but it sounds analog. They've conquered the digital control very well.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. So it has a Pultec characteristic in it that has a very different set of curves than the Maselec. So sometimes I'll need the curves in the Better Maker, and sometimes I'll need the curves in the Maselec.
It depends of your taste, of the musical genre, or
on the recording itself.
Okay.
It's not genre specific.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll use the Maselec for part of the sound and the Better Maker for the other part. Okay? Then we have the Dangerous Music backs. Have you heard of that?
Yes, this is a Baxandal EQ.
Yes, it's very nice.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll use that to supplement because neither the Mazalek nor the Bettermaker have quite the curves that are in the backs. So again, 3 different equalizers. Sometimes I use none, sometimes I use 1, 2, or 3 all at once. Okay.
A lot of processing.
Well, they're equalizers. It's not like they're compressors. Okay.
Okay, and the compressors?
I have, this is probably one of the most powerful and gentle and invisible compressors I have, is both a compressor and an expander. And that's the Mazalek MLA4. When I heard about the MLA4, I said, I have to get this because it incorporates the principles that I've been talking about for years and years and years. And I said, wow, let's try this out. And it was absolutely right. It's a 3-band compressor or upward expander, not expander in the traditional sense, but expander in the upward sense.
Yes, but it is a multi-band compressor.
3-band, 3 bands, and they are very, very wide and gentle. So the transition from band 1 to band 2 is like this.
Yeah, the crossover.
Yes, very, very wide crossovers, 6 dB per octave. So I might compress the first band for the bass.
Yes.
I might expand the middle band if the music is not recorded well enough and it needs some liveliness.
Yes.
Okay, to help the impact. Okay.
Yes.
And I might compress the high band if the high frequency energy is a little too strong on the transients. All in one unit. But I don't like to think of it as a multiband because I'm not a multiband person. I'm using this in a very gentle way to possibly enhance the recording, or I might just use 1 band of the Mazalek, and then it becomes a compressor with response in only the bass, or in only the mid-range, or in only the treble. And then, instead of thinking multiband, it's a very specific unit, very localized, so that you're only working on one section. Okay. Another compressor in my rack is the API 2500. Do you know that?
Yes, we have speak about that API so much by Facebook.
Okay. Well, I modified this unit.
Yes, I know.
Okay. And so it's a lot more appropriate for mastering. The output gain doesn't go above about 3 dB, maybe 4.
Yes.
The threshold can be turned all the way down so that there's no action at all. And then just turned up just a little bit so that the gain reduction goes maybe like this. Barely touches, okay?
Yes.
But the 2500 only gets used when I'm trying to be either more aggressive or to help to improve the punch of a rock recording. It's very good with rock music, okay?
Yes, I think that it is usually used in drum bass and such basses because it is very aggressive.
That's correct. But sometimes aggressive is what you need.
Yes.
Okay. And I have another analog compressor in the rack, which is the Pendulum ES8. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. That is a Varimu. And it's, shall we say, variable mu. It's better to say variable mu because Varimu is a trademark of Manley.
Of Manley, yes.
Okay, so let's say variable mu.
Yes.
But it's got, I prefer it over the Manley, no offense, Ivana, who's my friend,
Yes.
because it's got a more versatile attack and release characteristics than the Manley variable. And it's a little bit, it can be creamy if you want it to be, or it can be a little bit more aggressive. So the pendulum is yet another compressor, and it has quite a fat bottom. And but I'm using a sidechain on it to reduce the bass frequencies into the sidechain. It's a little bit like the thrust control in the API.
Yeah,
So
this
that
is a high pass filter.
on the sidechain.
Yes, in the Sidechain. Yes.
So that the bass drum doesn't can speak up a little better.
Yes, because the bass can excite the sidechain, and it can pump the sound.
That's right. And sometimes you like that too. But okay, let's see if that covers everything in the rack. Oh yes, and I have one more device in that rack, which is a custom wet-dry blender that I designed and built.
Yes.
And that goes around the pendulum, because sometimes the pendulum is a little bit too thick for the sound, but maybe I want to have just a little bit of it.
Yes.
So I can mix the pendulum in 1 dB steps with the dry. So the wet has a control 0 down to -24 in 1 dB steps, and the dry has a control 0 down to -24.
Yes,
and
this is like a little balance or mixer.
It's a parallel. It allows me to do parallel compression.
Yes.
Or any degree thereof. Or since the pendulum has a sound of its own, and sometimes that's very desirable, but I don't want too much of it, I can mix the two. Even if I'm not doing any compression, I can mix the two together to get either a more transparent sound. Can you see both of my hands?
Yes, yes.
Either a more transparent sound or a more fuzzy and tubey sound. So more tube, less tube, more
Yes.
tube, less tube. Okay?
This is like a panorama button.
No, it's two individual attenuators, each
Yeah,
one.
this is like a mixer.
Yes, and it's calibrated 1 dB per step. I designed the fader. In fact, I happen to have one right here that you can see.
Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes, I'm seeing it.
How about
With a
now?
lot of resistors.
Yeah, I built that.
It looks like fine.
Yeah, now listen to it. Wait.
Yes, this is detented.
You hear that?
Yes.
You hear it clicking?
Yes.
So this is a
By
custom
steps.
built, a custom built stereo balanced 1 dB per step attenuator.
Yes, that's great.
Isn't that cool? And that's what's used inside my little mixer.
Okay.
Okay, wait, there's more. There's more stuff.
Okay.
Okay, there's a TC Electronic System 6000
Yes.
in the digital chain. And there's two Vice DS1 Mark III, which I helped Daniel with some of the algorithms in that. So there's a lot of outboard gear, and there's also, of course, plugins.
It is better than any plugin, I think.
Which one, the Vice?
Yes.
I don't want to get into a discussion because I helped to develop a plugin which is quite
Okay. So this is all your mastering chain?
maybe if I haven't forgotten anything. Oh, there is one more. Sorry. It's the Animod ATS1. That's a analog tape simulator in the analog domain.
Uh-huh.
And it sounds better than any digital tape plugin.
Okay, I want to do a couple of questions about your mastering chain and how to use it. This is about the EQ and the compressors.
Okay.
I want to know if you use your EQ to in a additive or subtractive method.
Both.
Both. Okay, that's a good answer. And what depends?
If the level's getting too high, I'll subtract. If the level's getting too low, I'll add.
Okay. And about compressors, I think that compressors is the hardest equipment to use because it is not a natural equipment like an EQ. Some people are really dizzy with such equipments, and I want to know how did you use that equipment with faster or slower attacks and faster or lower release.
Okay. Generally, if it's a compressor, I don't like fast attack.
You don't like?
Not for mastering. I know that in mixing we might use fast attack, but in mastering, fast attack can produce some very bad artifacts.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So generally it's a medium or slow attack. It can be very, very, very slow if we're trying to do something like this. Can you see?
Yes.
Invisible, very slow compression. But I don't do that much either, because oftentimes if it's rhythmic music, then the attack and release have to work with the rhythm.
And how did you control the transients?
Probably with a peak limiter at the end.
Sorry?
Probably with a peak limiter at the end.
And what in which peak limiter did you use?
I've gone through about 10. They're all digital. Okay.
Okay. And about the threshold, did you put the threshold high, low? Did you want to compress a lot, or only compress a few dBs?
Generally in mastering, just 1 or 2 dB.
1 or 2 dB.
At the most. Usually 1 or even less than 1.
Okay, that's enough for me.
But there, I don't like to say usually, because it depends on the music.
Yes,
there's many
suppose.
pieces of music where I don't use any compression at all.
I suppose. I want to ask you if you use artificial reverb to try to paste all the songs together.
Okay. I didn't mention that I have a Bricasti M7.
Yes.
Which is one of the better reverbs, outboard reverbs. And in the TC System 6000, there's the VSS4, which is one of the better reverbs. And I also have the Altiverb. And I'm consider myself to be an expert on reverb. But the number of times that I'll use reverb in a mastering session is almost zero, unless the client sends me dry stems.
Uh-huh.
Then I might be combining a little bit of mixing with a little bit of mastering. And a lot of mastering engineers have never been, excuse me,
Yes.
a lot of mastering engineers have never been mixing engineers, so they would never think to do this, which is fine. But because I've been a mixing engineer, I would never use reverb without discussing it with the client, okay?
Yes.
Now, it wouldn't just, turn it on and say, oh, let's do that, because it changes their vision of the recording. But I'm not shy. If I get a recording and I say, oh, and to myself, I'll listen to the recording and I'll say, oh, that's an ugly reverb that they used on the vocal. So I might suggest to them, if you sent me I have a much better reverb here, and if they say, oh yeah, I've heard about the Bricasti, I wish I had it. And Bricasti samples are not Bricasti, trust me.
Yes.
Forget about samples for reverbs. Okay, so I might suggest, okay, if you send me a dry vocal along with the mix of your instruments, I'll put the reverb on the vocal. So I might do a little bit of mixing in the mastering room. But most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, no reverb, except maybe to fix tails, para prolongar el fin de una canción que tenga un ruidito al fin y tengo que hacer un fade out antes del ruido de los músicos y el fade out suene artificial. Yo puedo poner una cola para...
Una cola de la reverb.
Exactly. So, but that's probably about the only case where I'll use reverb in the mastering. 99% of the time, no, except with stems. And then 0.1%, 0.1%, okay?
Yes.
I might use a reverb if a recording comes in and it's very dry and it needs some early reflections or some reverberation. And I would discuss that with the client, and in that case I would add it. But it's very, very infrequent. However, I have invented a processor which is marketed by UAD called the K Stereo. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Okay. The K Stereo is not a reverb, but the K Stereo allows an engineer to bring out the ambience or reverberation in a recording after it's been made. And I might use that.
That's
to enhance the depth or the width. And I might use that these days about 30% of the time, because I'll get a lot of recordings from project studios where they don't have good rooms to record in, or they don't know how to mix with good space. They use cheap reverbs, and it'll help. It can help that, or enhance the depth or the space or the width.
Okay.
But remember, I said only about 30% of the time. The other 70% of the time, I won't use that either.
Okay, I think that there are two different schools of mastering.
Just two? How about 4 or 5?
Maybe 4 or 5, but I only know two schools. One of the schools put all the songs along and master all the songs at the same time, and another school only master one song, the next song, the next song. So how do you work?
If I'm using my analog processors, all of them except for the Better Maker, they don't have any memories, okay? The the better maker has memories. So if that's the only equalizer I'm using, I might, let's draw a picture here.
Yes.
In my DAW, song 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so there's song 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
I might try, if possible, to play the whole album from beginning to end without stopping. And if the second song needs a different EQ than the first, I'll send a signal to the better maker to make it change in between the songs. Okay?
Yes. But with the compressors, it is not possible.
That's right. That's right. Now, the Mazalek MLA4 has a wonderful control called master threshold. Okay?
Yes.
And in between the songs, while the better maker is automatically switching, if I have a note in my session at the top that says master threshold 4, in between the songs, I will change the MLA threshold. Okay. But the more different song 1 is from song 2, from song 3, from song 4, the more often I have to stop, set up the controls for number 2, pick up, and record the next song, okay?
Yes.
So in that case, I'll go to the beginning of song number 2, set it up, go back 30 seconds or a minute, play the previous song, okay, and punch. And if I don't think the transition worked, usually it works. If I don't think the transition worked, I will make changes to the processing of number 2 until it does work. Then I go back, play the end of song number 1, and punch, and keep going.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
And that's the way that most mastering engineers have worked for years and years and years. So it works.
Okay.
Unless it's a very complicated album. If it's very complicated, sometimes you have to go back and redo, which could be a problem. So I like the automation where I can play number 1 and then say, well, wait a minute, what about number 10? Is that going to work? Okay?
Yes.
But that's not always so easy either. So if it's without automation, even with automation, I'll pick the loudest, most aggressive, most impacting song in the album. Let's say that's song number 6, okay?
Yes.
And I will master that first. Then I'll go back to song number 1. I'll work on it and say, this sounds good. And I'll quickly jump to number 6 and listen to that. Then I'll jump back to number 1 and see if it's compatible, okay?
Okay, comparing.
And then I will record number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and cross my fingers. And 5 goes into 6 most of the time.
Okay. I have another question. This is about your acoustical treatments of your room. Can you say something about your acoustical treatment?
Okay. Let's start with the room itself.
Yes.
Okay. By 3. 8 times 3. Okay, wait. 3 is 4 times 2. Okay, I'm giving this to you in meters. So let me just get the height here, 4.5. Okay. The shape of the room to start with.
Uh-huh.
The floor of the room is solid concrete. Do you know what concrete is?
Yes, this is cemento in Spanish.
Cemento. Okay.
Cemento.
The walls of the room
Yes.
are all solid. There's
Yes.
no give, okay?
Uh-huh.
The speakers sit on this concrete. That means they don't do any movement.
Yes.
There's none of this.
There are no vibrations.
Very stable.
There are not vibrations.
Okay. Right, no vibrations. The Beach Boys are not here.
Yes, the Beach Boys song. Yes.
Okay, so the room is about 8 meters long.
8 meters.
Yes, about.
Oh, this is very long.
Bob Ludwig's room is 10 meters long.
Yes, but my room is very little.
Yeah, sorry. There are ways around it.
In another life.
Okay. The room is about 4.5 meters wide.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But now it gets interesting. In the front, it's about 4 meters high.
Uh-huh.
In the back, it's about 7.5 meters high.
So you have an increase.
Yes. The ceiling is sloped.
Yes.
We call that a cathedral ceiling. Un cielo catedral.
Yes. See.
Okay? All right? This means that there are no reflections between the floor and the ceiling.
Uh-huh. There are not flutter echoes.
Flutter echoes between the floor and the ceiling. And also it's very linear and it doesn't resonate ever. Okay.
Uh-huh.
On the side walls, I have some Sonex to reduce flutter echo in certain spots.
Yes.
And in the front, I have passive trapping. Okay.
Yes.
And then lastly, I have 3 of a new active trap.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever heard of
yes,
PSI?
This is like loudspeakers.
No, it is, but it isn't. Have you heard of PSI Audio from Switzerland?
Yes.
Oh, you know them.
Yes, active systems I have heard sometimes, but not really know what is it.
Okay. The PSI Audio makes an innovative bass trap called the AVAA.
Uh-huh.
V de Vega. V de Violeta.
Violeta, sí.
AVAA, okay? And I have 3 of them.
Uh-huh.
They are effective between 15 hertz
Uh-huh.
and 150 hertz. And they only reduce those frequencies which have extra pressure.
Uh-huh.
They, unlike any passive trap that's been made, they don't do anything unless they have to. And it's the experience is amazing. You can stand anywhere in this room, anywhere, and get even bass response without any peaks or dips.
So there isn't any sweet spot. There are all the room.
Right, from the point of view of frequency response.
Okay.
Now, it's not that perfect, okay? It's not that perfect.
Yes.
But it's much, much, much better.
It works for you.
It works very well.
Okay. Okay.
You don't hear any resonance from behind you when you're sitting. Yeah.
And
the bass is extremely tight and well defined.
It is controlled.
Yes. Now there's more. Hold on. Nobody's answering this phone. Hold on.
Yes.
Oh, good. Now, so we have the Revel speakers, REVEL, Ultra Gem. And the subwoofers are JL Audio Fathom F112. There's two of those. The subwoofers are optimally located in the corners. The Revels are optimally located for the best image. And everything is time aligned using a digital crossover from a company called from a product called Accurate Convolver. So it's digitally crossed over, digitally corrected, all of it.
Okay. My next question is about upsampling to 96 kilohertz in the mastering.
I do it all the time.
Yes. Can you explain us how to do the upscaling and how did you use this upsampling?
How or why?
How and why?
Okay, how first.
Yes.
If a recording comes in at 44.1,
yes,
or 48 kilohertz, I will upsample it first using the Weiss Sericon.
Yes.
That's WEISS.
Yes, I know it.
Okay. And that gets put into my session in Sequoia. Okay. Then I capture and work at 96 kilohertz or occasionally 88.2 kilohertz if the material that came in was 88.2.
Yes, the twice.
Yeah. And not because it's twice. No. Just because I don't feel the need to upsample from 88 to 96, that's all. So if it's at 88, it stays at 88. Then I master and capture all that to 96K files. Then I use Sericon again to downsample to 44.1 kilohertz, 32-bit float. So that becomes a 3244. 3244. And then I work on that in Sequoia, and I dither that to 16-bit. And if the Y,
yes,
the Porque, because it sounds better.
It sounds better.
It sounds better.
Yes, maybe in processing, in digital processing is better.
That's part of it. The other part is that the D to A converters seem to sound better when they're fed the higher sample rate. It's got to do with the filtering. It's not the real thing. Someday the D to A's will not make a difference, but if it's a discrete D to A, it hardly matters. If it's a a chip-based D-to-A, it really does make a difference.
Uh-huh.
That's because the filters in most D-to-A converters are compromised. They're cheap. They're poor.
But only in dither or in noise shaping also.
In resolution as well.
Okay. Okay. I want to know if you do an increase in the bit depth of your word length to 48 bits.
Generally, I work in 32-bit float because
Okay.
that's the word length of Sequoia.
Haha. And did you use any external word clock generator?
Yes, but not for the reason you think. My word clock generator is a Prism ADC, the Prism Lyra,
Haha.
because that's the converter that I use for the analog to digital and digital to analog in the outboard gear. So it has to drive the system.
Haha.
So it's the master clock has to be that
Okay.
ADC.
Maybe the next question is about how to mastering if you use a middle and side technique or
Sometimes.
maybe a stereo.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. It depends.
Yeah, sometimes.
And what depends? Why
If the mix is almost perfect,
Okay.
but maybe a center vocal is a little bit too loud.
Haha.
I might take the M channel down just between 200 and 1000. Take that down just a little.
Haha.
But never, ever more than a dB or it just sucks.
Okay. And did you use a parallel compression in your mastering?
Quite often. That's different than a lot of mastering engineers, but I do.
Haha.
I have a lot of tricks.
A lot of tricks. Okay, and when did you use the parallel compression?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, okay. About the microdynamic and microdynamic?
Expansion?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a word that I use to indicate upward expansion to enhance the upward movement of the music.
Haha. So you use the macrodynamic and microdynamic?
Both.
Okay. And how did you use that?
Well, if the attack time is fast enough, it'll enhance a very short transient.
Yes.
If the attack time is slower, it'll bring up the passages slower without doing that to it.
Haha. So this is both worlds.
Both worlds. Yes.
Yes. And about the loudness war, did you think that something is changed in the loudness war nowadays?
A very little bit. Very little bit. We have a long way to go.
We have a long way.
Yeah.
Okay, and
something. I mean, the more people are aware of it, but when you listen to the stuff that's out there, it's pretty loud. It's either loud, louder, or loudest. So we have to get past that.
And which level is a good compromise for you? A compromise decision for you, a good level?
In LUFS?
Yes.
Minus 16 LUFS if possible.
16, the standard is in minus 23, I think.
Yeah, but for music, you can usually get away. Depends on the kind of music.
Haha.
But
And RMS, it could be.
no, don't say RMS. Let's talk the BS 1770-4.
Haha.
Okay, BS B S 17
Yes,
70.
in the standard.
Yeah, measured that way.
Yes, in the standard.
Minus 16 if possible. But yesterday I did a hard rock, hard rock, and it was minus 14.
Minus
But
14.
yeah, but the competition for that particular genre could be minus 9. So it's still very conservative.
This is very, very low.
Which, minus 9? Minus 9 is very, very, very loud.
Okay.
Hablo de la competición, but in that case, I went as high as minus 14. I've made louder records than that, but usually I don't like the sound. But the client might like it, and that's what we have to do, is make the client happy.
Okay, so you say that the mastering levels is different from musical genres. Okay, but about the supports, for example, a CD, iTunes, long play. Did you mastering with different techniques?
For mastered for iTunes?
Yes, from iTunes.
No, I don't change. I don't change my technique.
Your philosophy is the same ever.
The same for everything. Yeah.
Okay. So we are getting to the last questions, I think, because you have
Tendrás
time.
que poner subtítulos en cada pregunta tuya.
Sí, y mejorar mi inglés. To improve my English. Okay, what can you recommend to people who is starting in the mastering world?
Listen.
Listen all the music they can.
Listen. Hear live music. Go out and listen to the sound of live instruments. Then come back into your room and hear recordings, and see if you think that what you hear out of your speakers is not even close, then get better speakers, better room, better acoustics before you start mastering.
Okay,
in other words, your monitoring system should be able to reproduce the dynamics of live music.
Yes, full range system, maybe?
Beyond full range. Better than full range. Full range is not a good description. Full range means wide frequency response, but also low distortion.
Oh, that it has a very good headroom.
That's right, good headroom.
Okay, I have a question that some people sent to me because you become to Spain a few years ago and to do some masterclass.
At ¿cómo se llama?
Vigo?
Yes.
In Galicia?
Yes.
So they are asking me when will you be back to Spain and give us some masterclasses?
Cuando me invitas.
Por mí puedes venir cuando quieras.
Bueno.
Te puedes venir a mi casa.
Gracias. Tenemos que hacer una
masterclass.
Yeah.
Okay, I will speak with the people here in Spain, with the studio here, PKO, if it is possible to bring us to give us some masterclasses.
Me gusta la gente.
Okay.
Mucho.
So thank you very much, Bob, for your time.
You're welcome.
I send you a virtual handshake. Yes. And it has been a very, very pleasure for me to speak with you.
De nada.
Okay, thank you and have a nice day.
Buenos días. Buenas noches.